Amen. Amen. Well, good morning. Yeah, bright lights. Bright lights. You guys are doing all right, man. I hope you are. We are into our second week of Unwalked. And the first week we talked about Abraham's life a little bit and how God promised him that he was going to bless him and his descendants. And we realized that that blessing took a little time. And so we talked last week how it's not going to be quick. God's blessing in our lives is not going to always be quick. It's not always going to be the easy turnaround. But Abraham, as we look at his life, goes through a lot of changes. And over the next several weeks, as we continue this series, Unwalked, we're going to walk with Abraham and look at the things in his life that he did and the uncertainty that he had as he is trying to walk out God's promises, as he's trying to stay obedient to God's call. Abram has to leave his home. He takes with him a few family members and some possessions, and he has to trust that God's going to bless him in this new journey. If we look at Abraham's life and then his sons and then Israel, there is a lot of trust there, right? And here's what I found out. When things get hard, when things start to go south, it's not always easy to trust. When we look at Abraham's life, God never promised to do things simple and clean, packaged up in a pretty little box with a neat little bow on it. God never promised that he would leave Abraham and just make it happen. God said, I'm going to do this through you. I'm going to do this for you. And I'm going to do this so that you can share it to the rest of the world. Following God, trusting his plan, believing in his promises isn't going to be quick. It's also not going to be easy. Trusting and walking with God is not going to be easy. And so when things get hard, we don't usually walk those hard things. We try to avoid them. We try to move around them. And those hard things go unwalked in our life. Andrew Murray, if you've never read any of Andrew Murray's stuff, he's a missionary. He was in the 1800s, and I know that sounds ancient, but he's an amazing person with an amazing story. And he said, oh, if God's children only knew what a glorious God they have and what a privilege it is to be linked in fellowship with him. If we only knew how good God was. And he says we're linked in fellowship with him. And if we would understand that, and we would truly link with him, we could rejoice in him. Even, he said, when it keeps us waiting. Even when we don't understand. He says, in his waiting, that will be the biggest proof of our righteousness, of his righteousness, of his grace, of his compassion. And it's in the waiting that we realize how good God really is. How many of you know that's true? Amen. Abraham's life, although he is in the book of faith as being a faithful person, isn't always great. Whenever you pick a Bible character or you pick somebody's life in Scripture and you decide to preach on it, you get to a point in that person's life and you go, I don't know if I want to preach that or not. And then you realize, you got to preach it because that's part of the story. And so today, it's not meant to be critical. It's not meant to be pointing a finger at you. It just is. Because Abraham's life is a lot about integrity and character, deception, manipulation, lies, big and small. The ones that he may not even realize that he was telling. He even passed that trait on to his sons. One of his sons was a deceiver. One of his sons told bigger lies than he did. It's just part of their story. But what can we learn from that deception? What can we learn? Well, today I hope we can learn a few things. That one, God's promises are not based upon our faithfulness. Amen? That's a good thing, folks. God's promises are not based upon your faithfulness. Although God's blessing is connected to our faithfulness, His promises are not based upon whether we do it right or not, because Abraham obviously did not do it right all the time. And he may have caused some trouble in his own life, as we will see. But there's some challenges for us. And if we look at Abraham's life and we look at how he walked through life, we'll see some of these challenges. The first challenge we're going to pick up on today is this. It's hard to trust when things go wrong. It's hard to trust God when things go wrong. Now, Abram, and Sarai, and Lot, they head off to the promised land. They're on their way. If you don't know, this journey was not just an overnight journey. It took them a while. And they were going into a land that they weren't familiar with. And Abraham looks at his wife, and he's like, man, you are smoking hot. You are beautiful. Babe, you are just beyond beautiful. So here's what we're going to do. When we get to this new place, tell them you're my sister. Because if they see how beautiful you are, and they're going to, because, man, there's no way that they cannot see how beautiful you are. And when they see your beauty, what they're going to do is they're going to take you, probably, and then they're probably going to kill me. And so let's not tell them we're husband and wife. Let's tell them we're sister. Now, he's not telling a full, bold lie here. It's kind of a half-truth, because he is technically a half-brother. If you go back and look, he is kind of that. I mean, that's just how it was back then. It's not weird. It's not. It is, but it's not, you know. But he's not telling a whole truth here. He's telling a false truth because he doesn't want to die. He wants to save himself. Genesis chapter 7, verse 17 tells us what happens when Pharaoh takes Sarah, and he does. Man, they walk into this land of Egypt because they go to Egypt to get out of the famine. And there's a famine going on in the promised land. The promised land's not looking too good. They get there and everything dies, right? This famine's going on. So they go to Egypt. And when they go to Egypt, Pharaoh goes, I want that woman. And so Abraham says, hey, she's my sister. It's okay. You don't have to kill me. You know, we're good. And so Pharaoh takes her into his harem. In chapter 12, verse 17, it says, the Lord sent terrible plagues upon Pharaoh and his household because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And once this happened, Pharaoh calls to Abram, and he says, what's happening? What's going on here? There's something happening. I take your wife in, and all this stuff starts happening. And he says in verse 19, why did you say she's my sister and allow me to take her as my wife? Now then, here's your wife. Take her and get out. Pharaoh ordered some of his men to escort them, and he sent Abram out of the country along with his wife and all his possessions. What went wrong? What went wrong? How could this plan go wrong? I mean, it was based upon deception and manipulation, and Abraham just told a bold-faced lie. How could that not go right? Well, for most of us, we've had to learn in our life that lying and manipulation and frustration and all those things that we try to do to self-preserve ourselves, they usually don't work out, do they? How many of us know that's true? Okay. Proverbs chapter 3, one of my favorite verses, one of the ones that I memorized early on in my walk with the Lord. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. The NIV says, he will make your path straight. And a lie and deception, lack of integrity, that doesn't equal straight path. That usually incorporates a go around and a move behind and a watch out for, and all these different ups and downs, and one lie leads to another. You know how the story goes. But God says here through the proverb, lean not on your own understanding. What was Abraham's fault? What did he, what happened? We know he lied, but what happened? He gets to this problem, he gets to this issue that he doesn't know how to deal with, and so he leans on his own understanding. He leans on what he has to offer. And all that Abraham can think of, Abram at this time, but all that Abram can think of is, she's my sister. That's going to save me. And so he begins this journey of manipulation and deception and lies. But God says if we seek his will, he doesn't say seek it when it's easy, seek it when it works out. He doesn't suggest to us that seeking his will is going to be clear and quick. It may not be easy, but he just says seek his will. And if we will do that, lean not on our own understanding, fall on him, lean in close to him, love him with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, then he will give us the straightest path possible. But Abraham just couldn't get there. It's hard to trust when things go wrong. That's our first challenge for us. And that's really the first truth that maybe we need to unpack this morning. Is that when life gets hard, and things don't go our way, it's hard to trust. And when it's hard to trust, when you begin to make this plays out in your mind, your wife or your boss or your church, the preacher, you begin to play these mind games. And they're just simply not true. And a lot of us live our lives in falsehood. Meaning we live our lives based upon these lies that we've told ourselves about who we are, about the world, about who our neighbors are, about who somebody else is, who the preacher is, who the teacher is. Roman and Jackson came home from school this week, and they were talking about teachers. And they were like, we're glad we didn't get this one teacher because everybody said she was mean. And Adia was like, yeah, there's this one teacher at school, she's really mean. And I'm like, oh, she's mean? Yeah, she makes us sit still in the line. Like, oh, baby, that's terrible, you know. But we tell each other and we tell ourselves these made-up stories that we fabricate in our own mind. Abraham didn't know what Egypt was going to be like. He didn't send scouts out to ask Pharaoh, hey, are you going to take my wife if she's beautiful or not? He doesn't do that. He just assumes. We all know what happens. But he assumes And he fabricates this story. He panics. And so when things get hard and things go wrong, we lie. We self-preserve. My kids tell me there's some new words that I need to learn. And so I had to do some research. There's this thing, maybe you've heard, kids, you cap and no cap. You see? If you're older than 25, you don't understand what that is. But my kids come all the time, that's cap. That's no cap. And I'm like, what in the world are they talking about? Why can't they just say what it means? Basically, it means something's untruthful or a lie or the truth. And it comes from, they don't know where it comes from, but it comes from hip hop, where these guys and singers and gals, where they cap their teeth with gold and silver. And a cap, we all go to the dentist because we have a filling or something, and they put a cap on our teeth, right? They cover up the cavity. They cover up the grossness. So that's a cap, right? Everybody, dentistry 101, right? So that tooth that you see is not real. It's just covering something up. And on the inside of that, it's all gross and cavity filled and nasty. But on the outside, it's like, man, look at this. And then if you're really cool, I've been told, you just put a grill on. And you just do all of them, right? So no cap means it's real. There's no caps on your teeth. Now, my kids have no idea that that's what it means. I did the research. They did not do the research. They just listened. That's the difference between next geners and the rest of the world. Next gen people are just skeptics of everything in life. That's just who we are. And if you tell us it's a cap, it's like, what is that? What? And so my kids say it's cap, meaning not real. Abraham puts a lot of caps on things because he's afraid, because he's fearful, because what's inside, he just doesn't know how to deal with. And so instead of dealing with it, he just caps it. He just puts something shiny on the outside, and it doesn't work all the time. So now you know. When you go out into the world, you can pretend that you actually know what they're talking about. Abraham doesn't always tell the truth. In dishonesty, deception, lies, it's the beginning of isolation from God. You know this is true. They trade one lie for another lie for another lie for another lie. And we learn early on in our growing up years, we learn how to get out of trouble. And I've always told my kids, just tell me the truth. I may be disappointed, but if it's really bad, I'm not going to be mad. I'm going to walk it through with you. Now, I may be frustrated, I may be a little bit, I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to isolate you. I'm going to bring you in, and I'm going to walk this with you. And I've had to do that with my kids. But when they lie, when they don't tell me the truth, when they kind of put a cap on it, and they come to church with a smile on, it's like, how's it going? Oh, everything's perfect. Cap. I see your caps. We all have them. We used to call them church masks, right? And we would put on this deception that everything in life is fine, that all is good, and nothing's wrong. We come to church, we go to work, be around our friends, we call them on the phone. Hey, man, what's happening? I was just thinking about you today. Everything good? Oh, yeah, man, everything's fine. Yeah, it's all good. You hang up the phone and then you break down, right? Farrah sent me a message the other night, and some stuff had happened at work. And she sent all of our kids. We have a group message, and she just said, really hard couple of days at work. If you see me crying in the corner, just let me cry. Okay. I know now. I don't have to wonder. Because what lying and deception and manipulation and all of that, what it does for us, it actually isolates us. Because we put a cap on it. And all that stuff that we're facing, all that stuff that's boiling up inside of us, all that stuff that we need to let out and we need to let other people help us carry our burden on, we never do because we put a cap on it. And what happens on the inside of the cap, you know what happens. The tooth just continues to rot. And eventually you have to pull that tooth. But what could have happened if we just said, you know what, I got something going on. If you see me in the corner crying, just let me cry. If you see me struggling, just know that I'm struggling here. And the next time somebody asks you, man, how's it going? Oh, it's fine. No, it's not. Maybe just say, it's been a rough week. But here's the other side of that. You and I have to be prepared to handle that. You and I have to be prepared to walk that with them, but we don't. And so what we've taught people is when they expose themselves, when they become open with each other, when they say, I'm struggling, we do this. Yeah, I'll get back with you. I'll pray for you, buddy. I'm praying for you. Good night. I'll see you. Good Lord, I got to get out of here. When we do that, we train our neighbors and our friends and our family. Can't handle that. It's too big for me. And so lies isolate us. Romans chapter 1 says that they traded the truth about God for a lie. So they worshiped and served the things God created instead of the Creator himself, who is worthy of eternal praise. Amen. When you lie and deceive and when you go that route, there's only one path that leads you to. And that is isolation and eventually idolatry. Abram, without really knowing it, put himself first above God's plan. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that he detests. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that kill the innocent, a heart that plots evil, feet that race to do wrong, false witness who pours out lies, a person who sows discord in a family. It's pretty clear that God does not like dishonesty and lying, manipulation, envy, haughtiness. He doesn't like a heart that plots evil. And you know what has separated God's people for way too long? These things. And the devil knows. The devil knows he cannot destroy Jesus. The devil knows he can't destroy the church. But he can isolate you. He caused you to hate your brother. He caused you to not like the preacher. He can cause you to say things about the preacher and about the church in private that you wouldn't say to his face. He causes you to talk about people in your small group when your small group's not together. He causes you to talk about people at work when you're at home. And all these lies and gossip and deception and haughtiness and all of these things isolate us from one another. And if he cannot destroy the church, he will isolate the church, and he will isolate you to the point of hate. And false witness. And you'll begin speaking about your brothers and sisters who are made the same image that you are. And you'll begin speaking to them as if they were the enemy. Now, we can have different beliefs and we can have different things, but we all have to be together in this thing. Maybe the next time you're out and about and you have an Abraham moment, or you're part of an Abraham moment, you'll simply stop it. And you'll say, you know, that's not right. That's not true. Because God doesn't go for those things. Lying and deception and manipulation, it isolates us. And once we're isolated, the second challenge comes up. We hurt other people around us. When we begin to isolate, when we begin to lie, when we begin to deceive, we hurt other people even if we don't mean to. Genesis 20. Abraham should have learned the first time, right? She's not your sister, dude. But he doesn't. And again, later on, when he goes to a different place, he has the same fear. He married a really good-looking woman, and he thinks everybody else is out for her. And so he has this insecurity in himself. He has this insecurity in God's plan. And so he goes and he moves to the Negev, and he lived there for a while between Kadesh and Shur. And then he moved on to Gerar. And when he moves to this place, he's a foreigner. I mean, he's not there. They're different. You could tell he's just not part of the group, right? It's kind of like moving to Scott County. You're either born and raised or you're not. And if you're not, you kind of feel it. Yeah, where's Barry? I just heard Barry. He's like, I've been from Alabama. Just ask him. He'll tell you. But he goes into this place and he doesn't feel comfortable and he feels isolated because he's already been there, done that. And so he comes up with a plan. And this time, he doesn't not only himself do it, but he gets his wife to go along with him in it. And so King Abimelech goes and sends for Sarah and says, hey, come be my wife. Lies always hurt other people. And that night when Sarah enters into the king's palace, into the king's room, something happens. And the king doesn't sleep with his new wife, but he has a dream. And that night, God came to King Abimelech in a dream, and he says, you're a dead man. Okay, now that will wake you up. He says, for the woman you have taken is already married. But Abimelech had not slept with her yet. And Abimelech he said, Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Will you destroy an innocent man? Didn't Abraham tell me that she is my sister? And she herself said, yes, I'm her sister, he's my brother. Yeah, we get it. I acted, he says, in complete innocence. I had no idea. My hands are clean. It's true. Abraham, trying to save himself, almost destroys a nation. Abraham, trying to save himself, gets his wife in trouble. Deception and manipulation and lies always hurt someone else. And we can never escape them. We can never outrun them. We can never outlive them. Abraham Lincoln said, no man has good enough memory to be a successful liar. It's true. John Maxwell said, if you're a liar, you're lying. My favorite is C.S. Lewis. He said, a little lie is like being a little pregnant. It doesn't take long before everyone knows. We're okay with little lies because those little lies don't hurt anybody. That little white lie that we tell at work just to save face, They don't hurt anybody. I mean, I'm not really lying. I'm just not telling you the whole truth. Okay, so you're deceiving me. No, I'm not really deceiving you. I'm just protecting you. So you're manipulating me. Eventually, there's going to be a baby. And everybody's going to know, oh, you're pregnant. Yeah, I just don't know how that happened. It doesn't take long before a little lie to turn into a bigger lie, and a bigger lie to turn into a cover-up, so on and so forth. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to tell you a little secret. Not every lie is a lie. What do you mean not every lie is a lie? A lie is only there if you're being deceptive for an evil purpose. Sometimes we lie because it's the right thing to do. Does this make me look fat? Yes, honey, you're terribly fat. And I would not wear that. Do you know how well that works? See, there's an ethical dilemma here. I was told in ethics class in college, if you were part of the Underground Railroad and a slave trader came and he knocked on your door and he asked if you had any slaves, how would you answer that? How would you answer that? See, not every lie has an evil motive. Not every lie is deception. And we have to understand that we are human, and it's part of our world. And part of the curse at the very beginning was that we would have to do these things, these hard things in life. And some of us don't lie, but we protect unity. And if you ask me, do you know something about something? I have every right and responsibility to say, I can't speak on that. Well, do you know? I cannot deny that or confirm that. Is that a lie? No. There's no deception in it. There's no manipulation in it. There's no evilness in it. People have jobs where their jobs are put them in situations where they have to lie. They can't tell you the truth. So don't ask. Don't ask. That's just a little depth there that's hard to define. The third challenge is it's hard to trust when God's plan when we fear the future. Abraham was asked, whatever possessed you to do, Abimelech says, whatever possessed you to do such a thing? And Abraham says, you know what, I got up early and I thought you were a terrible person. I thought you were a terrible plan. Abraham, I thought this was a godless place. And I thought that you were going to be like this. And I thought you were going to do wrong. Again, I go back to the beginning where we started. Most of the time, we think ourselves into situations that aren't really real. And so I have to decide, am I going to let my fear run my life? Or am I going to stand on God's promises? I fear the future, so I lie. I don't know what God's doing, so I lie. When I was guys can get ready. When I was a young Christian, I had come out of I'm going to open up the curtain here for a moment. I came out of divorce, and I came out of a life of lying. And I would lie to make my mom happy. I'd lie to make my dad happy. I'd lie so I wouldn't get in trouble here, so I wouldn't get in trouble there. I think most of the time most people realize I was lying, and I don't think you can lie that good. And I just kind of grew up that way. Now, as Wayne said, that we pray every morning, and I was telling the group that I was going to share this story with you. And Wayne said, well, I never had to arrest him, so, it's a good thing. But I grew up lying. And that carried over into my new walk with Jesus. And I just kind of left that. I never dealt with that. One, I really didn't know how to deal with it. And nobody ever really walked that with me. So it just went unwalked, right? It was there. And it was probably 2000, 2001. I was here on staff. The church was running 1,200. And pressure. New Christian. Baby, I didn't even know half the stuff. 80% of the stuff that I know now. And I was just trying to figure it out. I was just trying to hang out with the kids. I was learning as much as I was trying to teach. And I was a children's minister and had 300 kids in children's ministry, over 100 volunteers. Church was growing. Church was about 1,200. And, it was just booming. This place was full. Pressure upon pressure. And elders meeting with elders and elders meeting with staff and building buildings and $35 million. And if you were here then, you know. But for a young Christian who had been a Christian less than 5 years, less than 3 maybe, a young dad, a young father, never really having that foundation, this deception just went unwalked. I never walked down the path. I never had to deal with it. And I'll never forget it. I get called into Phil's office. He sets me down, and I know it's not good. Yeah, you could know walking into staff meeting whether it was going to be a good week or not. You just kind of knew. Am I going to get yelled at today, or is it going to be a good week? Okay, it's going to be one of them. All right, so we go that way. I get called in the office. He sets me down. It's just me and him. And he says, I'm going to tell you something. So you got a lot of potential. So we hired you because you got a lot of potential, and you don't even have any idea what God's going to do for you. But you're getting ready to throw it all away. I'm like, whoa. I kind of scoot down. He's set up. Look at me. Man up right here, right now. I'm like, I'm going in my brain. I'm going, what in the world did I do over the weekend that was so bad? And I told a volunteer about some curriculum. And I said, I'll get right on that. No, I hadn't done it. It wasn't a real big deal to me. I was just going to take care of it, and I hadn't done it. And guess what? That person called my bluff. And then that person went to Phil. And because of that, I'm forever grateful. Because Phil looked at me and he said, you have the weekend. It was on a Friday. He says, you have the weekend to decide whether you're going to be a man of integrity or not. And when you come back on Monday, you can be a man of integrity and have a job, or you can be a liar and go somewhere else. Okay. So I go home, and I told Farrah, I said, I'm fired. She goes, what? I have to tell her. And I explained to her what's going on, and she walks with me through that. And I came back on Monday, and I said, I'm sorry, he goes, I know, but you have to know. He said, I know, but you have to know. Are you going to be a man of integrity or not? So from 2001 on, I've tried to walk in integrity. And here's the hard truth. It doesn't always work because people don't want to hear the truth. It doesn't always work when somebody confronts you and you confront them with the truth, with the word, with the facts. They don't want to know that because they're not really playing by those rules. And so speaking the truth and walking in integrity has not always been easy, but it's been the right thing to do. Have I been perfect? Have I never told another lie? Probably not. I would be lying if I told you I wasn't ever told, right? But you have to make a decision today whether you're going to walk in integrity and follow God's plan, or you're going to let it be unwalked. And for 26 years of my life, I never had anybody stand up to me and say, man up and be a man of integrity. And I'm forever grateful. Let me read to you Psalm 91. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare about the Lord. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust him. For he will rescue you from every trap, protect you from every deadly disease. He will cover you with his feathers. He will shelter you with his wings. He is faithful. His faithful promises are your armor and protection. Do not be afraid of the terrors at night, nor the arrows that fly during the day. Do not dread the disease that stalks in darkness, nor the disaster that strikes at midday. Though 1,000 fall at your side, though 10,000 are dying around you, these evils will not touch you. Open your eyes, see how wicked are punished, and make the Lord your refuge. If you make the Most High your shelter, no evil will conquer you, no plague will come near you. For he will order his angels to protect you wherever you go. They will hold you up with their hands. They won't even let your foot hurt on a stone. Now he's talking about Jesus, but he's also talking about us. Speaking the truth. Do I lie, manipulate my way out, put myself first, or do I trust? Have patience and follow, even when things go wrong. The psalmist ends 91 with these two verses. Would you please stand? They're going to be on the screen. Read them with me. When they call on me, I will answer. I will be with them in trouble. I will rescue and honor them. I will reward them with a long life and give them my salvation. This is the Lord's promise to you. When you call, he will answer. He will be there in your trouble. He will rescue. And when you follow, he will give you a long life. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy. But it's going to be worth it. Stay the course. Fight the good fight. Stand on his promises. And when things go wrong, trust in the one who loves you more than you could ever imagine. Trust the one who wants to bless you more than you can ever imagine. For he who is in you is stronger than he who is around you. Today is a new day. Walk in integrity. walk with the character of the Lord Jesus Christ, and your life will be long. If you want to know Jesus as your Savior and you've never done that, please come talk to me. If you want to know more about how to walk in integrity, come talk to me. I've been there, done that. And if you need to repent and you need to confess, I will be here. And all you have to do is just come and talk to me. And if you don't want to do that in front of a bunch of people, that's fine. Come talk to me during the week. Let it go. Be a man or woman of integrity. And let the Lord Jesus lead and guide you. Thank you so much for being here today. Don't let fear rule your life. Walk with the Lord. He's there with you. Let's sing this.